Religion and the greater community. Religion exists in countless forms in the universe, from very simple tribal practices to practices that are undertaken by large empires and by large assemblies of nations that have adopted a singular practice. While there is diversity in the universe, there's rarely diversity within one world. As nations become more technologically focused and as resources become more rare and difficult to obtain, uniformity and singularity become the central emphasis, and here religious institutions almost inevitably end up being tied to the state. Some nations become entirely secular, never having had a strong religious tradition of their own. Or, in the case of being colonized by another nation, whatever religious tradition they had was assimilated and often erased from the public consciousness. For nations that have maintained a religious tradition, it becomes wedded to the state, so there is no competition, duality of power, or crossing of intentions. Unfortunately, in this situation, religions end up losing their primary spiritual focus. They lose their essence and become vehicles of worshipping either the leadership or the race itself, praising the beneficence, the excellence and the superiority of one's race, the inevitability of one's success and one's rightful superiority over other nations. When religion is united with a political system to this degree, it rarely survives the process and ends up being a ceremony for government and another method to keep the people focused and oriented towards the wishes and dictates of the state. Religion has ended up in this situation in so many places. Where it has been able to maintain a certain degree of autonomy from the political system, it has had to focus itself entirely upon ceremony and transcendent matters, never criticizing or creating doubts about the dictates of the political system, never raising ethical questions about its treatment of its own citizens or its views or treatments of other citizens. As long as religion in these circumstances remained fundamentally transcendental, it was not a problem. Nations where there is a diversity of religious practices are extremely rare, and there is great resistance to the introduction of another nation's spirituality. That is generally resisted intensely amongst trading nations. The sharing of religious views and ideas rarely occurs and is kept out of the context of commerce. While religion here has become extremely limited and controlled, there is a greater spiritual practice that is happening in many places in the universe, often in secret, often under clandestine circumstances. It is a practice of something much more fundamental. It is worthy of your attention and important for humanity to discover. For it is here, if humanity is ever to establish a deeper connection with another nation in the universe, through this deeper practice and awareness that a greater association may be established. The way of knowledge is practiced in many worlds, knowledge being the greater spiritual reality that the creator of all life has imbued in intelligent life throughout the universe. Knowledge remains a potential in all intelligent life. Even an intelligent life that has been bred and genetically modified for specific purposes, it is still a potential, even in these circumstances. This potential, however, does not mean revelation. It does not mean awareness. It is but a potential. There are certain small groups and free nations that have achieved very high states in this practice, a practice that is largely without ritual, that does not praise idols, and that does not worship specific teachers, avatars or spiritual representatives. While these things may be added in certain cultures, according to the needs and traditions of those cultures, the fundamental emphasis is on the discovery and the expression of this deeper spiritual power and intelligence that is embedded within the individual. This intelligence is extremely valuable in the greater community, particularly for free nations, because it is the only part of the individual that cannot be influenced or manipulated. It remains entirely honest and pure. Even if the person who possesses this knowledge turns against it and denies it, or loses awareness of it completely, knowledge within them remains pure and undefiled. It can only respond to God and to the presence of knowledge in others. This is why knowledge is viewed as such a tremendous danger and a threat to oppressive regimes, to hierarchical societies, to those who engage in collective breeding, and to nations that want to retain utter control over their citizens. If they are aware of knowledge at all, it will generally be viewed as a threat, as a competitor for authority, as something that could seed dissension or arouse hostility within their populations. It could arouse the desire for freedom, arouse the desire for individual self-expression, and arouse indignation at the long weight of oppression that has been placed upon them and its extremely damaging effects. This is why the practice in the way of knowledge is carried on in secret and in private. Only amongst free nations can it flourish and be seen as a benefit to the nation, instead of a source of competition to those in power. Nations that are guided by knowledge have special skills and powers, which they must protect from intervention and scrutiny from the outside. This can represent the secrets of a free nation, for knowledge can give rise to great inventions, to great insights, and to great powers of perception. Those who are seers with knowledge can have great efficacy and great range and penetration in their perception. But this requires knowledge as a foundation for one's thinking and behavior, for such creations to emerge and for such skills to be developed. Knowledge is entirely too revolutionary for any kind of a dictatorship. It has a resonating effect with others, and if it is demonstrated or expressed, it inspires and encourages others and makes others aware of their restraints and lack of freedom. This is why the practice in the way of knowledge has been suppressed and even crushed in many large and powerful nations. Those who practice this essential spiritual focus must do so in great secrecy, functioning in deep networks of practitioners and even communicating with other practitioners in other worlds whenever that is possible. Sacred texts are smuggled to other nations. The power and the revolutionary nature of knowledge make it extremely potent. Yet it cannot be misused by heads of state or by powerful commercial forces. You cannot use knowledge. You can use psychic abilities. You can develop a seer without knowledge, but you cannot use knowledge. It is an intelligence all of its own. It cannot be used and manipulated to provide advantages or domination over others. This is what makes it holy and pure and authentic. Even amongst the practitioners, they will begin to see in their studies that there is a difference between the mind that they think with, the mind that has been conditioned by their culture and worldly experience, and the greater intelligence of knowledge within them. To the unwise, knowledge looks like a great power that can be used for many applications. But the wise understand that this cannot come about, and that knowledge is not the same as psychic ability or developing one's sensory skills. For a free nation, the cultivation of knowledge amongst its advanced practitioners becomes extremely valuable in discerning the intentions of others from the outside, in recognizing challenges or difficulties for the nation, and for providing beneficial forms of education for their citizens. In the community of knowledge, you want everyone to become strong with knowledge, because that increases the power of knowledge tenfold. Now you have many eyes looking, many ears listening. You have many minds that are attuned to a greater set of abilities. This group mind and knowledge is cultivated in certain rare and unusual societies with great power. It can discern, almost without evidence, the mysteries and the secrets of others. And it can be used to foster the most beneficial forms of scientific and philosophical development. In nations that are not free, there is also a group mind process that has spread considerably amongst this part of the greater community, where groups of individuals will focus on trying to solve a problem or to penetrate another's reality. This is great efficacy if it is directed with skill, even if it is used for purposes that are unethical or destructive. Whereas the power of technology has its limits, the power of the mind has rarely been fully developed by anyone. The mind is seen here not as the source of power, but as the medium for power. That is a very important distinction. There is a network of the wise, and there is a network of practitioners in the way of knowledge. Most have never met one another. But the seeds of knowledge were planted in their cultures and are supported by spiritual forces who exist beyond the visible range, who encourage the discovery, the development and the expression of knowledge within many, many worlds. For a nation can direct the thinking and behavior of an individual, but it cannot overcome knowledge within that individual. Once an individual can begin to sense that there is a greater presence and a greater intelligence within them, and can begin to receive signs and guidance from this intelligence, they have begun the long process in regaining and developing the most fundamental freedom. In general, knowledge will have to be shared in secret. It is not for public consumption. Even in your world, there are very few people who are really ready to become a student of knowledge and to learn the way of knowledge, the greater community way of knowledge. The requirements upon them will be great.